Hey, I'm Sarah Mitchell. I'm 32. And up until 2 weeks ago, life was calm. I was living in this beautiful old Victorian house, the one my grandmother left to me in her will. Everything felt settled until I came back early from a work trip. What I saw when I pulled up didn't feel real. My clothes, my things, all of it were thrown out on the front lawn like trash. And standing right there on my porch was my dad, my stepmom Diane, and my very pregnant stepsister Amber. And get this, they were acting like the house belonged to them. Then Diane looks me dead in the eyes and says, "We changed the locks. This is your sister's house now." And just like that, she handed the keys to Amber like she had every right to. If you're watching this, drop a comment and tell me where you're tuning in from, and don't forget to hit that subscribe button, because I'm going to walk you through exactly how I took back what was rightfully mine. But honestly, this mess didn't start on that front lawn. My story goes way back. Growing up, my grandma Eleanor was my everything. She was my safe place, especially after my parents split up when I was 15. My mom moved to California for a job. We still talked, and I'd visit during the summers. But I decided to stay with my dad mostly so I could finish high school with my friends. But also I couldn't imagine being far from Grandma Eleanor. She was my anchor. And I never imagined the house she left me would become the center of such betrayal. For 3 years, it was just me and my dad living quietly in a small apartment across town from my grandma's old Victorian home. Life wasn't perfect, but we found our rhythm. We became a little team, figuring things out together. Dad worked long hours at his accounting job, and I kept things running at home, doing chores, staying on top of school, and somehow managing to stay on the honor roll. Then everything shifted. Dad met Diane at a company event. And just like that, within 6 months they were engaged. Suddenly, I had a brand new family. Diane and her daughter Amber, who was only a year younger than me. I really tried. I genuinely tried to make it work. I helped Dad organize a sweet little engagement party. I gave Amber tips about our high school to help her settle in. I even gave up my bigger bedroom so they could turn it into a master suite, and I moved into the tiny guest room without complaining. But now, looking back, there were signs I didn't see. Diane would drop these little comments like how lucky I was to have my dad, like I owed her something just for being in our lives. Amber? She'd borrow my clothes without asking, and most of the time they came back stained, ripped, or not at all. When I finally brought it up to Dad, hoping he'd have my back, all he said was, "They're still getting used to everything. Give them time." So I did it. I gave them years of my time, years spent watching my dad slowly turn into someone I barely recognized. The man who once told me to always stand up for myself had started nodding along to whatever Diane said, no matter what it was. By the time I left for college, the tension at home was thick. No one talked about it, but it was always there, lingering in the air. During those hard years, Grandma Eleanor's house became my safe place. Every Sunday, I'd go over to her beautiful old Victorian home. I'd help her with the little things she couldn't manage anymore, tidying up, doing dishes, and then we'd sit in that cozy kitchen and talk. She'd tell me stories from when she was young, teach me her secret recipes. "This house has been in our family for 3 generations," she'd say with a little sparkle in her eyes while we baked her famous apple pie. "Someday, it'll be yours to take care of." Back then, I didn't really think too much about it. It felt like one of those sweet things grandmas say, comforting but distant. That changed during my senior year of college. Her health started fading fast. The doctors said it was heart failure, and with the right care, she might have 2 to 5 years left. So after graduation, I made a choice. I moved in with her. I found a marketing job in town with flexible hours, just so I could be there to take her to appointments, keep her company, and just be present. Dad and Diane showed up every now and then, but those visits always left Grandma tired. Diane never stopped with the questions, always poking around about the house, the furniture, the family keepsakes. It was exhausting for Grandma. And honestly, it was exhausting for me too. One evening, after everyone had gone home, my grandma looked at me and said quietly, "Your stepmother asked if she could have my antique silver set." I stared at her, completely stunned. She said since I won't be needing it much longer, she might as well start enjoying it now, Grandma added with a soft chuckle, trying to brush it off. I was livid, but Grandma just reached over, gave my hand a gentle squeeze, and said, "Sweetheart, don't let it bother you. Everything's already taken care of." 2 years later, she passed away peacefully in her sleep. Losing her shattered me, but at the same time, I found comfort in all the beautiful memories we'd made together in that old Victorian house. It was more than a home. It was our little world. About 2 weeks after the funeral, we all gathered in her lawyer's office for the will reading. Dad, Diane, Amber, and a few other family members. Mr. Peterson, Grandma's lawyer for as long as I could remember, didn't waste time. He was calm, clear. Grandma had left the house to me along with most of her things. There was a small amount of money set aside for my dad and a few keepsakes for others, but the house? It was mine. Free and clear. The energy in the room shifted instantly. Diane blinked, then snapped. But that's the family home. She turned to look at my dad, clearly expecting him to say something. He shifted in his seat, awkward and silent. Not a word. Mr. Peterson simply nodded and said, "Your grandmother updated her will 3 years ago." She was fully aware and very clear about her decisions. As we walked out of the office, Amber brushed past me in the hallway and muttered under her breath, "Must be nice to have everything handed to you." I paused for a second, hoping Dad might say anything, but he just looked caught in the middle and ended up walking off with them. For the next 2 years, I poured everything I had, my time, my energy, my savings into the house Grandma left me. I updated the old wiring, fixed the plumbing, and brought back some of the charm the place had lost over the years. Every little project felt like I was keeping a piece of her alive. It was more than just a house, it was our memories, our Sunday afternoons, our quiet conversations. Preserving it felt like honoring her love. Things with Dad, Diane, and Amber stayed distant. Polite but never really warm. We'd meet for holidays here and there, smile, make small talk. But I always caught Diane looking around the house almost like she was sizing it up. I should have seen it coming. Meanwhile, work was finally falling into place. I got promoted. Twice. My campaigns were getting noticed and I felt like I was finally building something of my own. The extra income gave me the chance to take on bigger home projects like bringing the wraparound porch back to life. That porch was Grandma's favorite place during summer evenings. Sitting out there again felt like a full circle moment. Then came a rare family dinner at a restaurant. Amber surprised us by sharing she was 4 months pregnant. She gently touched her belly, smiling, and Diane looked like she was glowing beside her. "We're so excited to welcome the first grandchild," she said. And honestly, I was happy for Amber. Complicated history aside, I meant it when I congratulated her. Dad looked so proud, and for a fleeting second it actually felt like we might be becoming a real family again. That feeling didn't last, because Diane turned to me and said, "Now that your career's going so well, Sarah, have you thought about next steps? Maybe a nice condo downtown closer to your office?" I blinked. "No, I'm happy where I am. The commute's fine and I love that house." She didn't back off. "It's just so much space for one person. Especially now, with Amber expecting families should support each other during big changes." The message was clear. I changed the subject. 2 weeks later, I got some amazing news: an invite to speak at a huge international marketing conference in London. 2 weeks abroad. A once-in-a-career opportunity that could push everything to the next level if I nailed it. So, I casually brought up my upcoming trip during a family get-together. Nothing big, just mentioned it in passing, but the second I did, I caught Diane and Amber exchanging these weird little glances. You know, the kind like they were silently plotting something. Diane tilted her head and asked, all sweet and casual, "Oh, when exactly will you be gone?" I told her, first 2 weeks of April, but something about her interest gave me this strange feeling in my gut. "That's a long time to leave your house empty," my dad chimed in. Then he added, "Do you want me to check on it every now and then?" The way he said it, I don't know. It just didn't sit right with me. I smiled and said, "Thanks, but no need. Mrs. Benson next door already offered to keep an eye on things. She's got a spare key for emergencies." And again another weird look passed between Diane and Amber. Like they were trying not to look too obvious, but they were failing at it. Then, a few days before my trip, Diane suddenly invited me to dinner. She said it was to wish me well before I left. I wasn't sure about going, something felt off. But I didn't want to seem rude, so I went. The whole dinner felt strange. Diane kept bringing up how lucky I am. "You really are so blessed, Sarah," she said with this overly sweet smile. "A beautiful home, a great job, no husband or kids tying you down. Don't you think it's time to share a little of that good fortune with your family?" I just smiled and kept things polite, but inside, alarms were going off like crazy. That night I couldn't shake the feeling. So I decided to trust my gut. I had a full security camera system installed the weekend before I left. Everything was set to send real-time alerts straight to my phone. And just to be safe, I asked Mrs. Benson to check the house every day while I was away. I made it super clear. No one goes inside no matter who they are. Not even your dad? She asked, a little surprised. Especially not my dad, I said. The first week away was fine. I was at a conference soaking up knowledge, networking, enjoying the energy. Mrs. Benson sent me a quick message every day, all good. Nothing to worry about. But in the second week her texts started to get vague. Then they stopped completely. I tried calling her a few times, but all I got was her voicemail. Now I was really uneasy, so I called another neighbor just to check. They told me Mrs. Benson had left with a suitcase, something about a last-minute trip to visit her sister. My heart sank. Then, by sheer luck, seriously, the universe was on my side. The last few days of the conference got cancelled. The main speaker got sick. I booked the earliest flight I could and got home 3 days ahead of schedule. Just to be cautious, I had the taxi drop me off a couple blocks away from my house. I needed a minute to breathe, to prepare myself. I don't even know why, but deep down I knew something was wrong. And then I turned the corner. I froze. My heart just dropped. All across my front lawn were my things: furniture, clothes, books, pieces of my life tossed around like trash. Some were already ruined by the weather. I just stood there, shocked, hurt, angry. This wasn't a misunderstanding. This was betrayal. When I pulled up to the house, a moving truck was sitting in the driveway. My dad was carrying a box toward the front door. Diane was standing on the porch, bossing the movers around, telling them where to place furniture. And Amber? She was just lounging in a lawn chair, one hand resting on her pregnant belly, the other checking things off on a clipboard like she was running the whole operation. For a second, I honestly thought maybe I was imagining things, like maybe the jet lag was messing with my head. But then a breeze hit me, fresh and cool, and the smell of newly cut grass grounded me. No, this was real. This was actually happening. I took a long breath, steadying myself, and walked toward the house, my house, carefully stepping around my stuff that was scattered all over the lawn. It looked like someone had dumped my entire life out here like garbage. Amber spotted me first. Her eyes went wide like she'd seen a ghost. "She's back," she whispered sharply, loud enough that Diane spun around. My dad stepped out of the front door at that moment, and the second he saw me, he froze. There was this flicker of guilt in his eyes just for a moment before Diane quickly jumped in front of him. "Sarah," she said with that sugary fake tone she always used when she was about to say something awful. "We weren't expecting you until Saturday." The way she said it, like they hadn't just taken over my entire home, made my stomach twist. My jaw clenched. I looked around at the mess, my clothes, boxes, memories all just tossed outside like they meant nothing. "Well, clearly," I said, trying to stay calm. "Would someone like to tell me what the hell is going on with my house?" Her smile dropped. The sweetness disappeared like it had never been there. "Plans have changed," she said flatly. "This place is just too big for one person. Especially now that Amber's baby is on the way. We all agreed this setup is better for the family." I was speechless. "We? Who's we?" "You decided that?" I said, barely keeping it together. "This house was left to me. Grandma gave it to me. It's legally mine." I turned to my dad, silently begging him to step in, to say something that made this all a huge misunderstanding. But he just looked uncomfortable and cleared his throat. "Honey," he said quietly, "Amber needs a stable place right now. You've got your job, your freedom, you don't really need all this space." It just made sense. My heart dropped. The betrayal stung more than I thought possible. "So let me get this straight," I said, voice shaking. "You broke into my house, threw all my things on the lawn, changed the locks, and you think that's okay? In what world is that even remotely legal or decent?" Diane stepped forward, casually holding the new keys like a trophy. "We changed the locks," she said, cold as ice. "This is your sister's house now." She handed the keys to Amber, who'd finally gotten up and waddled over. "Your father agrees. This is what's best for everyone." I turned back to my dad, searching his face for even a sliver of the man who raised me. "Dad," I said quietly, "you know this isn't right." This is illegal. It's breaking and entering, it's theft, and honestly, it's heartbreaking. There was this quick flicker of hesitation on my dad's face, but before he could even speak, Diane placed her hand on his arm. Your father already signed the ownership papers, she said, all calm and matter of fact. He's the eldest living relative. Elena would have wanted her great-grandchild to be raised in this home. I couldn't believe what I was hearing. It was a lie. And they knew it. That's not how inheritance works, and they were fully aware of that. Grandma left this house to me. It's in her will. It's legally mine. I stepped forward, heading toward the front door. But Amber and Diane moved in, blocking me like some kind of human wall. Don't make this harder than it needs to be, Sarah, Amber said, her voice soaked in fake sympathy. Think about the baby. Stress isn't good for either of us right now. I glanced around, feeling my heart pounding in my chest. A few neighbors were watching from their yards. Mrs. Chun across the street even had her phone out, probably recording. No one stepped in, but at least I wasn't alone. People saw what was happening. I want to talk to my dad. Alone, I said firmly, trying to stay calm even though my hands were shaking. Diane started to argue, but my dad finally nodded and followed me down the driveway to the sidewalk. The second we were out of earshot, I turned to him. Dad, what are you doing? This isn't just wrong, it's illegal. You could actually get in trouble for this. He couldn't even look me in the eye. Sarah, try to understand, he said softly. Diane thinks this is what's best. Amber's boyfriend left. She has nowhere to go. The baby needs a stable place to grow up. And I guess I'm just supposed to lose my home to make that happen? The home Grandma chose to leave me. The one I've poured thousands of dollars into fixing up and taking care of. I looked at him, searching for any hint that he realized how deeply he was betraying me. You've always been so strong, so independent, he went on. Amber needs help. You, on the other hand, you can afford to rent something. You make good money. I couldn't believe it. This was the same man who raised me to do the right thing even when it's hard. Who once told me to never let anyone walk all over me. And here he was excusing stealing from me because he thought I could handle it. I took a deep breath and gave him one last chance. Dad, tell Diane and Amber to leave. Give me back my key. If you don't, the next people who show up will be the police. And just like that, something in his face changed. He wasn't the dad I grew up with anymore. He looked distant. Cold. I'm sorry you feel that way, Sarah, he said. But the decision's been made. Diane's right, this is what's best for the family now. And in that single moment, I realized something heartbreaking. I didn't just lose my home. I lost my father too. He walked back toward Diane without another word. She was already watching us, arms crossed, like she knew she'd won. They whispered something to each other, then looked back at me with smug little smiles. You should grab your stuff from the lawn, Diane called out. We were kind enough to leave it out for you. But the garbage truck comes tomorrow. The way she said it, so cold, so casual, with my dad just standing there beside her, saying nothing, that was it for me. I couldn't take it anymore. My hands were shaking as I pulled out my phone. I didn't want them to see me fall apart, so I turned around and started walking. Enjoy the house while you can, I told them. And then I left before the tears could catch up to me. I barely made it to the corner before everything just hit me at once. I couldn't see clearly through the tears as I called my friend Lisa. She only lived 15 minutes away. Can I come stay with you for a few days? I asked the moment she answered, my voice cracking. Something happened. That night, Lisa's apartment became my safe place. I was completely numb, still in shock over what had just gone down. I didn't say much, barely anything really. But Lisa didn't push. She just ordered some food, made sure I ate, and quietly stayed close. The next morning we sat on her couch with coffee in our hands. She looked right at me and said, they can't just take your house. There has to be something you can do. That snapped something in me. It was like a light flicked on through all that fog of hurt and betrayal. You're right, I said, pulling out my laptop. Let's see what my options are. We started by checking the security system I'd set up before my trip. Even though someone had clearly disabled the indoor cameras, they must have forgotten one thing: my system automatically backed everything up to the cloud. And there it was, clear as day. The footage showed them walking in with someone who looked like a locksmith. Then later, They were removing my things and bringing in Amber's. Lisa just stared at the screen. This is literally breaking and entering. I didn't waste another second. I called Mr. Peterson, my grandma's lawyer. Thankfully, his assistant was able to squeeze me in for an emergency appointment that afternoon. I remember your case clearly, he said, once I finished explaining everything. Your grandmother was very clear about what she wanted. He pulled out a thick folder and began laying out the documents. She left the house to you, no conditions. There's no legal way your father or anyone else could just take that from you. Hearing that should have brought relief, and it did, but right after came the anger. The lies, the manipulation, all of it. So what can I do now? How do I get them out? I asked. Mr. Peterson adjusted his glasses and began flipping through the paperwork carefully. After a few moments, he smiled just a little. Here, he said, turning the document so I could see. This is the part they didn't expect. He pointed to a clause I'd never noticed before. Your grandmother thought ahead. This section says that if any family member tries to go against her, will tries to challenge it or sneak around it, they lose any right to their inheritance. And they're also responsible for all the legal fees if you have to enforce the will. Mr. Peterson laid out my options one by one, from filing a police report for breaking and entering to getting an emergency eviction order. We decided to go with a multi-step plan. First, get a temporary restraining order to stop them from doing more damage to the house. Then, press criminal charges for the break-in. And finally, start preparing for a civil case to recover the cost of damages and legal fees. After leaving his office, I went straight to the police station with the security footage. The officer taking my report didn't seem too convinced at first until he saw the videos. You could clearly see them breaking in and moving my stuff out. That changed everything. We can go with you to get any personal essentials, he said. But for the actual eviction, that'll need to go through court. Next, I headed to my bank just to make sure my accounts were safe. And guess what? Someone had actually tried to pull money from my savings just the day before. The reason? A so-called family emergency. Thankfully, the bank shut it down because the ID didn't match. Still, the thought made my stomach turn. When I got back to Lisa's place, we sat down and made a full list of everything we saw in the security footage, every item they'd taken, every piece of furniture they damaged and left out in the yard. Lisa even helped me call my boss to explain everything and ask for a few days off. I was nervous about how he'd react, but he completely surprised me. Take all the time you need, he told me. Family stuff like this can be incredibly tough. Later that night, something unexpected happened. Amber's ex, Tyler, called me. Turns out Lisa had reached out through some mutual contacts. I heard what's going on, he said, sounding genuinely worried. It's not okay. And there's something you should probably know. According to Tyler, Amber was actually closer to 6 months pregnant, not 4 like she told my dad. And Tyler hadn't abandoned her, she broke up with him. Why? Because Diane convinced her they could get their hands on my house. They'd been plotting it for months, just waiting for the right time, waiting for me to be gone long enough to move in. As angry as it made me, his call gave me a lot of useful information for my case. The next morning, Mr. Peterson filed for the restraining order, while I pulled together every piece of evidence I had. When I went over the footage again more carefully, I found something that made my heart sink. Diane was caught on camera taking out my grandma's antique jewelry box, the one filled with family heirlooms. A quick check on local resale sites confirmed it. She'd already listed some of the pieces online. We documented everything. Every photo. Every message. Every clip. It was becoming an airtight case. Then, through my lawyer, I sent them one last warning. They had 24 hours to leave the house and return what they'd taken or face full legal consequences. The certified letter had been delivered, signed for, and completely ignored. And as frustrating as all of this was, every step I took brought me closer to something deeper, turning my pain into purpose. This house wasn't just bricks and wood to me. It was ours, mine and Grandma Ella Laner's. A place built on late-night talks, Sunday breakfasts, and a love that ran deeper than blood. So the thought of Diane and Amber stripping away everything that made it home, repainting the walls, replacing the furniture, erasing the memories, lit a fire in me. I had to fight back. We're ready, Mr. Peterson told me during our final prep meeting. Then he looked at me a little softer. Sarah, your grandmother would be so proud of you. She always believed you had the strength to protect what mattered. That hit me. Because deep down I was doing this for her to honor everything she'd passed down, not just a house. Before diving into the full legal fight, Mr. Peterson suggested we try one last mediation. It puts us on higher moral ground, he said. And sometimes when people are forced to face real legal consequences, they suddenly want to play nice. I agreed even though I doubted Diane would ever back down from her fantasy version of reality. We set the meeting at Mr. Peterson's office neutral territory. I didn't want that kind of energy anywhere near my home. They showed up Diane, Amber, and my dad all together, looking a little caught off guard when they saw Mr. Peterson. I had asked them to bring a lawyer but of course they didn't. We don't need one, Diane said, smug as ever. It's just a family discussion. Mr. Peterson started calmly, laying everything out. My legal ownership. The documents proving the house was left to me. Screenshots from the security footage them breaking in. I watched their expressions change from cocky to quiet. Reality was starting to sink in. Then Diane jumped in, her voice cutting through the room. These documents can be contested. Ella Lehner was old and easily influenced. Sarah took advantage of her when she wasn't fully herself. My dad nodded, though he wouldn't look at me. She manipulated her grandmother, Diane added. Turned her against the family just to get everything for herself. It was so ridiculous I almost laughed out loud. That's a complete lie and you know it, I said. Grandma made her decisions with a clear mind. She was sharp right up to the end and her doctor would back that up. My dad finally spoke. You barely let us visit her, he said. Every time we came over, you said she was too tired or not feeling well. Because she was tired, I shot back. Especially after Diane would spend the whole time asking about what antiques were worth, instead of actually being there for her. Amber had been quiet the whole time until she suddenly broke down crying. I just need a stable home for my baby, she said through her sobs, holding her pregnant belly like she was shielding it. Is it really too much to ask for a safe place for your niece or nephew to grow up? Honestly, if I hadn't seen the security footage of her laughing in my kitchen and snapping selfies just a few days ago, I might have believed the act. But I knew better. Mr. Peterson, calm and composed as always, gently redirected the conversation back to the facts. Whatever anyone feels personally, he said, the legal truth is simple. The house belongs to Sarah. Right now, what you're doing counts as breaking and entering. And taking her things or damaging them is theft and destruction of property. He slid a paper across the table. This is an official notice. You have 48 hours to move out and return everything you took. If you don't, we'll have no choice but to press criminal charges and file a civil suit. Diane didn't even look at the document. Instead, she said, we've already talked to a few relatives who saw how Sarah isolated Ella Lehner. They'll testify that she wasn't in her right mind when she made those decisions. I saw my dad shift in his seat, clearly uncomfortable. And in that moment, something clicked. Diane had probably been planting lies throughout the family, twisting the story. I looked her dead in the eye. If you're talking about Aunt Martha and Uncle George, they visited Grandma all the time even when I wasn't around. They knew exactly how sharp and aware she was. The way Diane's eyes flicked just slightly wider told me everything I needed to know. Her so-called witnesses weren't going to back her up. Mr. Peterson, ever the professional, offered a possible middle ground. If Amber's housing situation is urgent, he said, maybe Sarah would be open to helping her find a new place. There are great programs for expectant moms, temporary housing, support, the works. I nodded. As much as this hurt, I was still willing to help. I'll even cover the security deposit and the first month's rent, I said. There's a nice 2-bedroom complex right by the hospital that's move-in ready. For a second, I thought I saw my dad actually considering it, like he was torn. But Diane didn't give it a chance to land. Absolutely not, she snapped, standing up and grabbing her purse. That house should go to the family member who's actually starting a family. Sarah doesn't need a 4-bedroom home all to herself. She glanced at Mr. Peterson coldly. We'll see you in court. We've got proof of Sarah's manipulation. Then she turned to my dad. Come on, Richard. We're done here. As they walked out, my father paused at the door. He looked back at me just for a moment, but I couldn't read his face. And then Diane tugged him along and he was gone. Mr. Peterson let out a long, tired sigh. "They're making a huge mistake," he said. "But that's their decision. Based on how they responded, we'll move forward with full legal action." The mediation had failed. It hurt, but honestly it also gave me clarity. I had held on to a sliver of hope that my dad might finally stand up, that he'd remember what was right. But that hope faded as the door closed behind him. Even though it hurt, at least now I knew where I stood. No more guessing. No more hoping. I looked at Mr. Peterson and said with a steady voice, "Let's move forward." My heart was done wavering. I wanted my home back. But just when I thought the worst was behind me, things only got messier. While we waited for the court date, I kept an eye on the security cameras, the ones that still had a view of the outside of the house. And what I saw broke me in ways I didn't expect. Diane and Amber had started full-blown renovations. They ripped out the old banisters, the same ones my grandma Ella Laner used to polish every spring, and replaced the antique lights with shiny modern chandeliers. Through the windows, I could see they painted over the floral stencils Grandma and I had hand-painted in the dining room. We had worked on those together just the summer before she passed. Watching it all disappear felt like someone was slowly erasing her memory, one brushstroke at a time. Then my friend Lisa showed me something that made my stomach drop. Amber had been posting about her new home on social media. There were pictures of my furniture rearranged, my art swapped out for bland prints, and Grandma's antique desk turned into a changing table. The comments were full of love and excitement. People were congratulating her, not knowing the truth that this wasn't her home to begin with. What really got to me, though, were the little details. In the background of those pictures were my things, my college diploma still hanging on the wall, family photos with me literally cropped out, and my signed first edition books lined up like they were just there for decoration. It was like I was being scrubbed from my own life. And then came the final blow. Messages from distant relatives started pouring in. Some were confused, others angry. "Your dad said you abandoned your grandmother during her final years and tricked her into changing the will," my cousin Jennifer wrote. "How could you do that to sweet Aunt Eleanor?" That's when it hit me. Diane wasn't just redecorating. She was rewriting history. She had reached out to almost every family member, spinning a story where I was the selfish granddaughter who left and manipulated her way into the will. Some people believed her instantly. Others weren't so sure and came to me for answers. "Something about this doesn't sit right," my Uncle Thomas messaged me. "Eleanor always spoke so proudly of you." Reading those words, it was the first time in days I felt a tiny flicker of hope. When I realized I had the chance to finally speak my truth, I kept it simple and honest. I wrote a calm, clear email explaining everything, just the facts. I attached the legal documents and even the doctor's notes proving Grandma was mentally sharp when she made her decisions. But I didn't send it to everyone, only to the relatives who reached out to me directly. I wasn't about to fuel a big family drama parade. Then, out of nowhere, another shock hit me. I got an alert from my bank. Someone had tried to access my investment account. When I called to find out what was going on, the rep told me that a man claiming to be my father had phoned in, saying there was a family emergency, and he needed money fast. Thankfully, the bank's security measures stopped it before anything could happen. But it was a wake-up call. This wasn't just about my house anymore. Diane clearly had bigger financial goals, and they weren't subtle. And just when I thought I'd seen it all, a twist I didn't expect showed up. Tyler, Amber's ex, reached out, and what he told me changed everything. He said Amber had mentioned they were planning to sell the house once they established residency. Then he dropped the real bomb: Diane had already found a developer who was interested in buying it because of its location. That explained their rush. That explained why they were ripping out all the vintage details. They weren't making space for a baby. They were gutting Grandma's home to make it more market-friendly. With this new info, I called Mr. Peterson right away. We updated our emergency filing to include the possibility that they might try to sell the house before things were settled in court. We also went through the security footage frame by frame, capturing before and after shots of every historic feature they tore out. It was heartbreaking but necessary. The judge reviewed everything and granted us a temporary order. It didn't kick them out of the house yet, but it did stop them from making any more changes until ownership was legally decided. When Diane was served the papers, her reaction was, well, dramatic to say the least. Lisa's friend, who works at the courthouse, told me Diane threw the documents at the server and shouted, No judge is gonna tell me what to do in my family's house. Classic Diane. But no matter how loud she yelled, the court order stood. The destruction of Grandma's home was put on pause for now. Then the next day I got a voicemail from my dad. And it hit differently. He said, "Sarah, honey, you need to stop this lawsuit. Diane's really upset. And this isn't good for Amber or the baby. We're your family." It was meant to sound caring, but all I could hear was guilt-tripping and manipulation. "Please don't sue each other. Can't you see this is tearing us apart?" That's what he said. And in that moment I realized he still didn't get it. It wasn't the lawsuit that broke this family. It was the fact that they stole my home. That's what really shattered us. And watching him completely dismiss that like it wasn't even real, made it painfully clear he wasn't thinking for himself anymore. Diane had completely taken over his voice, his thoughts, his sense of right and wrong. I didn't call back. I couldn't. Instead, I threw myself into getting ready for the court hearing. While organizing Grandma's old papers, thank God, I'd kept them safe at my office, I came across something unexpected. Her journals. She'd kept them during the last few years of her life. Page after page, written in her own hand, clear, sharp, full of thought and intention. She wrote about the house. About Diane. About her concerns that Diane was more interested in heirlooms than memories. But the part that hit me the hardest? She wrote about me. "Sarah has the strength her grandfather and I always admired," she said in one entry. "She deserves to carry our home into the future." I sat there holding those words, letting them settle deep into my bones. They weren't just her thoughts. They were proof. Clear, heartfelt evidence that she knew exactly what she was doing when she left me that house. About Diane. About her concerns that Diane was more interested in heirlooms than memories. But the part that hit me the hardest? She wrote about me. "Sarah has the strength her grandfather and I always admired," she said in one entry. "She deserves to carry our home into the future." I sat there holding those words, letting them settle deep into my bones. They weren't just her thoughts. They were proof. Clear, heartfelt evidence that she knew exactly what she was doing when she left me that house. And that she trusted me to carry forward the life she built. But while I prepared in silence, Amber was busy online. Her social media campaign was in full swing, dramatic, emotional, completely twisted. She posted tearful videos from my grandmother's old bedroom, calling it the nursery she might lose. Telling the world I was heartless and cruel for trying to evict a pregnant woman. The comments section exploded with sympathy for her. They didn't know she was living in a house she had no right to be in. And I didn't fight back publicly. I didn't post or argue. I stayed quiet. I focused on what actually mattered: facts, evidence, and keeping my emotions steady. Mr. Peterson, my lawyer, was calm but confident. "They've made serious mistakes," he told me after our final prep meeting. "They've let their arrogance blind them. That'll be their undoing." I nodded. I was tired, but I was ready. All I wanted was my grandmother's home back. And for them to finally understand you can't just take what doesn't belong to you. Justice was coming and they had no idea how close it really was. The morning of the first court hearing came faster than I expected. My stomach was a mess of nerves and resolve. I hadn't slept much the night before. Lisa stayed up with me, going over every piece of paper, every little detail. Mr. Peterson had prepped me well. "This first hearing is all about temporary possession," he said as we walked up to the courthouse. "And remember, first impressions matter. Judges pick up on everything." As I stood at the courthouse steps, I reminded myself of something Mr. Peterson had said. "Let them see your calm determination, not your anger, even if it's justified." And he was right. I had every reason to be furious, but this wasn't the time for emotion. This was the time to be steady. Inside, we were directed to a courtroom not too big, not too small, where several cases were scheduled for that morning. And there they were already seated across the room. My father, Diane, and Amber. Amber, of course, came dressed like she was playing a role, a tight maternity dress that made sure everyone noticed she was pregnant. Diane went for the classic good family woman look: conservative suit, polished exterior. My dad, well, he looked like he wanted to disappear. His tie looked like it was strangling him, and he kept glancing around the room, but never once did he look at me. Then I noticed a young guy next to them, flipping through papers like he was cramming for an exam. Mr. Peterson leaned over and whispered, Looks like they scrambled to find a lawyer last minute. The poor guy looked overwhelmed, clearly not someone who had time to really dig into their case. When our case was finally called, both sides walked up to the bench. Judge Carlton, a sharp and composed woman probably in her 60s, looked at us all with that unreadable face judges are so good at. "This is a property dispute between family members?" she asked, scanning the documents in front of her. That's when Mr. Peterson stepped forward. Calm, clear, confident. "Your Honor," he said, "this isn't just a family disagreement. This is a case of unlawful entry, property theft, and illegal occupation. My client, Ms. Mitchell, is the rightful owner of the home and we've brought all the documents to prove it." He handed over a thick stack of papers: my grandmother's will, the deed with my name on it, tax records showing I'd been paying for 2 years, and receipts from all the work and renovations I'd paid for out of pocket. Judge Carlton studied them for a moment before turning to their side. "And your client's claim to the property is based on what exactly?" Their lawyer stood up, still looking like he hadn't quite caught up to what was happening. "Your Honor," he began, "my clients believe the deceased was unduly influenced by her granddaughter. They're challenging the will, claiming diminished capacity and manipulation." The judge didn't flinch, but her voice turned a little colder. "Do you have any documentation to support that? Medical evaluations? Witness statements?" The lawyer cleared his throat, a little uneasy. "Your Honor, we're still in the process of collecting everything from the time the will was signed. But for now, my clients are living in the family home and getting ready for their baby." The judge turned to Mr. Peterson, my attorney. "Do you have any proof of the deceased's mental state when the will was made?" Mr. Peterson didn't miss a beat. "Yes, Your Honor. We do." He spoke with calm confidence, laying out everything clearly. "We have a signed statement from Mrs. Ella Laner Mitchell's primary doctor, confirming she was completely mentally sound at the time. We also have testimony from the attorney who drafted the will, plus the 2 witnesses who were present when she signed it. All of them say she knew exactly what she was doing." He gently placed Grandma's handwritten journals on the judge's bench. The judge gave a small nod and set them aside to review privately. Then Mr. Peterson added one more thing. "We also have video footage, Your Honor. It shows the defendants entering the property while Ms. Mitchell was away on a business trip. They changed the locks, took her personal belongings, and caused damage inside the house." The mood in the courtroom shifted. You could feel the tension rise as he played the clip. There on the screen was my father, Diane, and a locksmith standing at my front door, then carrying my things out onto the lawn like it was nothing. The judge's face darkened, her eyes fixed on their attorney. "Mr. Harrington," she said sharply, "are your clients aware that breaking and entering is still a crime even if it's a family home?" Before he could answer, Diane jumped up. "That wasn't breaking in," she snapped, pointing straight at me. "Richard is Ella Laner's son. He has more right to that house than she does. She's the one who's been taking family heirlooms and locking us out of what's rightfully ours." The judge slammed her gavel once hard. "Mrs. Mitchell," she said firmly, "you will only speak when I address you. Mr. Harrington, please get your client under control." The rest of the hearing moved forward slowly. The judge took her time going through all the evidence from both sides. When she finally spoke again, her voice was calm but decisive. "Based on the legal documentation and the disturbing video evidence of unlawful entry, I'm issuing a temporary order. Possession of the property is hereby restored to Miss Sarah Mitchell." The judge didn't waste any time. She looked my father and Diane straight in the eye and said, "Effective immediately, you're ordered to leave the house within 48 hours and everything you took needs to be returned." She made it crystal clear. Until the court could fully sort out the fight over Grandma's will, the property stayed in the hands of the rightful, documented owner, me. Before we left, the judge also ordered a detailed list of everything they'd taken from the house and made it illegal for them to make any more changes to the place. As I stood up to leave, I looked across the courtroom and locked eyes with my father. And for the first time since all of this started, I saw something different in his face. Doubt. Like maybe, just maybe, he was realizing what a mess Diane had pulled him into. Diane, on the other hand, looked like she was about to explode. She was whispering angrily to their lawyer, who honestly looked like he wanted to be anywhere else but there. Outside the courtroom, Mr. Peterson shook my hand. "This is just the beginning," he said. "But it's a strong one." The judge clearly isn't buying their story. For the first time in weeks, I felt like I could breathe. I knew we weren't done yet, but something in me felt lighter, like we were finally being seen and heard. "What happens now?" I asked him. He gave me this little half smile and said, "Now? We wait and see if they actually follow the court's order, which honestly I doubt. But if they don't, it'll only make things easier for us at the full hearing." And he was right. Instead of leaving the house like they were supposed to, Diane filed some last-minute emergency appeal. All it did was buy them a few more days in my home. But legally, their case was starting to fall apart. And I could feel it, justice was getting closer. After weeks of legal games from Diane and my dad's lawyer, the final hearing was finally on the calendar. Yes, their emergency appeal had been rejected. But they'd still managed to score a full hearing to try and challenge Grandma's will. While they scrambled, I stayed at Lisa's place and kept my focus on what mattered. Meanwhile, Mr. Peterson and his team were gathering every piece of evidence we could find. The night before the hearing, I couldn't sleep. Not even for a minute. Because I knew tomorrow could be it. The day I either reclaimed everything Grandma left behind or lost it for good. During our last prep session, Mr. Peterson looked at me and said, "We've got everything we need. And something they're not expecting." He opened his laptop and clicked on a file I didn't recognize. And then there she was, Grandma sitting in her favorite chair, smiling gently at the camera. We were sitting in the living room of Grandma's old Victorian house, the one that had stood like a quiet witness to so many memories. The timestamp on the video said it was recorded about 6 months before she passed. Her body had started to give out by then, but her mind? Still sharp as ever. She looked straight into the camera, calm and steady. "This is Eleanor Mitchell," she began, her voice strong, even though she looked so fragile. "I'm recording this to go with my last will and testament, especially about what happens to this house." She went on to explain carefully and clearly why she wanted to leave the house to me. She talked about how I'd taken care of her while she was sick. How she trusted me to keep the spirit of the home alive, to honor its story instead of selling it off or gutting it for profit. And then, she got to the part Mr. Peterson, our lawyer, had called our secret weapon. "I feel I need to address the chance that my son, Richard, or his wife, Diane, might try to challenge this." Her tone changed slightly, still composed, but firmer. "Since Diane married Richard, she's been asking a lot about the value of this place, the house, the furniture, everything. She's even hinted a few times that I should sell it all, move into assisted living, and use the money to help them out." Grandma's face tightened just a bit, not angry, but clear. "I want to say for the record that I'm completely in my right mind. No one's pressured me. No one's made this decision for me. I know exactly what I'm doing, and I've thought through our family dynamics very carefully." Then she added something that hit me deep. "If anyone challenges my will, saying I was confused or manipulated, I want this video used as proof, as my voice, even after I'm gone." She kept talking for a few more minutes, walking through specific things that had worried her about my dad and Diane. She also shared the little things I'd done, the way I kept the house clean, the stories I'd listened to, the history I tried to preserve. Every word felt like a soft pat on the shoulder from her, even though she wasn't there. When the screen went dark, I just sat there, completely still. I could barely breathe. "She knew this could happen," I finally whispered, wiping away tears. "She was still protecting me." Mr. Peterson gave a quiet nod. "Your grandmother was incredible. Sharp, thoughtful, and very, very prepared. This video? It's exactly what we need if they try to claim you pressured her." The next morning, we walked into the courthouse. And there they were, my dad, Diane, and Amber, already waiting. Diane looked way too confident, whispering to their lawyer and shooting smug little glances in my direction. Amber was playing up the pregnancy thing again, wearing a tight dress and clutching her belly like she was about to go into labor right there in the hallway. I'm pretty sure the dramatic winces were staged. She'd tried that move before. But I wasn't scared. Not anymore. My stomach flipped the moment I saw the judge walking by, but what really caught me off guard were the moving boxes. A whole stack of them, just sitting out in the hallway like they already owned the place. "Are those what I think they are?" I leaned over and whispered to Mr. Peterson. He nodded, not looking thrilled. "They're assuming they've already won. Looks like they're planning to grab more of your stuff today." Honestly, their arrogance kind of worked in our favor. It showed. Once the courtroom settled, Judge Carlton, the same one from our last hearing, opened the file and started flipping through it, eyebrows knit together. So the defendants are formally contesting Eleanor Mitchell's will, he said. They're claiming undue influence and diminished capacity. Mr. Harrington, you may proceed. Their lawyer walked up to the bench like he already knew he was going to win. That confidence alone made my heart drop. Your Honor, he began, we've gathered strong evidence that Eleanor Mitchell was isolated from her family during her final years. We also have affidavits from several relatives who say the plaintiff discouraged them from visiting. He handed over a stack of documents and I instantly recognized them. Statements from distant cousins who barely showed up once or twice while Grandma was sick. And, he added, we have a testimony from Richard Mitchell, the deceased son, who claims his daughter took over more and more of Eleanor's financial decisions near the end. My dad avoided eye contact as he took the stand. When he started talking, it felt like he was reading from someone else's script. He painted this twisted version of what happened, saying I kept him away from his mom and pressured her into rewriting the will. He looked uncomfortable, like he didn't fully believe what he was saying. But still he stuck to Diane's story. Then it was Mr. Peterson's turn. During cross-examination, he pressed Dad about why he hadn't been around much during Grandma's illness. That's when the cracks started to show. Dad admitted he came by when he could, but finally admitted that after marrying Diane, his visits had dropped off. Next, Mr. Peterson brought in someone who actually mattered. Dr. Reynolds, Grandma's longtime physician. He testified with calm certainty that Grandma had been mentally sharp and totally capable of making her own decisions. He said she'd even talked with him more than once about her will and how she wanted everything handled. In my professional opinion, he said, calm but confident, Eleanor Mitchell was of sound mind right up until the final stretch of her life, especially when she signed her will. The most shocking part came from Mrs. Benson, my next-door neighbor. She explained how Diane pressured her into leaving town while I was away on a work trip. Diane made up a whole story about a sudden family emergency and said she needed to get into the house. Mrs. Benson said Sarah told her they were checking on a water leak, but since they didn't have a key, they needed to borrow mine. She seemed desperate, Mrs. Benson said, so I handed over the emergency key just before leaving to see my sister. That's how they first got in before they called a locksmith to finish the job. By the afternoon, both sides had laid everything out. The judge looked like she was just about ready to make a decision. That's when Mr. Peterson stood up with the final blow. Your Honor, he said, we have one last piece of evidence. It directly addresses the claims made by the defendants. With your permission, we'd like to share a video recorded by Eleanor Mitchell, something she made knowing this exact situation might happen. Judge Carlton raised her eyebrows, surprised but curious, and gave a small nod. The room went quiet as the video started playing on the monitor. I couldn't bring myself to watch it again, I'd already seen it. So instead I looked at my dad. His eyes were locked on the screen. The second he heard his mother's voice, all the color drained from his face. And then she spoke. Calmly, clearly. Grandma went step by step, breaking down every single lie they had told. She named dates. She remembered conversations. She even brought up how Diane had been asking her about the house's value and pushing her to sell. Then she talked about me, how I'd taken time off work to care for her after she got out of the hospital. That's when I saw tears start rolling down my dad's face. Diane, though? Completely different reaction. Her jaw tightened, eyes cold and hard. She was trying so hard to keep it together. But you could see it, her whole plan was falling apart in front of everyone. When the video ended, the room was dead silent. You could hear a pin drop. Judge Carlton slowly took off her glasses and paused. Then she spoke. Given the overwhelming clarity of this evidence, both of Eleanor Mitchell's intentions and her mental state, I am denying the challenge to the will. The property. Everything legally belonged to Sarah Mitchell, just like it said in her will. Then came the part we'd all been waiting for. The judge turned to the breaking and entering charges and made it clear. My dad and Diane had to leave the house immediately. Not only that, but they had to return anything they'd taken and pay for the damage they caused. And then with this calm but serious look, the judge said something that gave me goosebumps. I'm forwarding the evidence of breaking and entering and property destruction to the district attorney, she said, for possible criminal charges. That moment it was everything. The justice, the closure, it hit deep. I felt this wave of relief not just for me but for my grandmother. Even after she was gone, she had found a way to protect what mattered to her. Diane leaned over and started whispering angrily to their lawyer. But the judge wasn't done. She looked Diane straight in the eye. "And Mrs. Mitchell," she said firmly, "this court does not take lightly the fake evidence and lies you've presented. If the DA decides to press charges, I'll be handing over every single transcript." As we gathered our things to leave, I walked over to my dad. He was just standing there, silent and still, while Diane continued arguing with their lawyer. "Dad," I said softly, "Grandma would have forgiven you, and I hope one day I can too." The look on his face said everything. He didn't need to speak, I could see it. Something had finally hit him. The very next morning it was time to take back my home. A sheriff's deputy came with me as my dad, Diane, and Amber were officially removed from the property. It was tense. Diane kept this icy bitter silence the whole time. Amber, of course, went full drama mode, crying about being thrown out into the street. My dad didn't say much. He just moved slowly, quietly, shoulders heavy, loading their stuff into their cars. But walking inside the house? That was the hardest part. I hadn't stepped foot in there for weeks. And what I saw, it broke my heart. The vintage wallpaper Grandma had carefully kept in the front hallway, painted over in dull, boring gray. The beautiful wooden banisters she loved, ripped out and replaced with cold metal ones. And in the kitchen they had already started tearing down her original cabinets. The new, modern ones were still in their boxes, like they hadn't even finished ruining it. Every change felt like a punch to the chest. It felt like a personal attack, like they were trying to erase every memory, every piece of history that made that house ours. Once they left, escorted by the deputy, I stayed behind. Alone. I walked from room to room, quietly taking in the damage, making notes of what could be fixed and what was just gone forever. What hit me hardest was the nursery. They'd started setting it up in what used to be Grandma's bedroom. Her beautiful antique four-poster bed? Gone. Replaced with a sleek crib and a changing table that didn't belong. The soft rose-colored walls she adored were now a loud, jarring yellow, with cartoon animals stenciled around the edges. It didn't feel like her room anymore, it didn't even feel like my house. I found myself sitting on the old window seat, the one piece they hadn't touched. And that's when the tears came. Real heavy ones. The kind I'd been holding back since this whole nightmare began. I wasn't just grieving the changes to the house. I was grieving the cracks in my family that I knew couldn't be patched up. The next few days were a blur of people and activity. Friends showed up right away, helping me go through everything for the insurance claim and figure out what could actually be saved. Lisa took charge like she always does, getting a cleaning crew together to clear out the half-finished renovations. And Marcus, one of my coworkers who's handy with woodwork, offered to help rebuild some of the original pieces that had been ruined. Honestly, the amount of support was overwhelming in the best way. People I barely knew stepped in. Neighbors who saw the drama unfold on my lawn brought over food and offered to help. Mrs. Chun, who had recorded the whole thing, even helped me track down a few things Diane had sold online. And then, out of the blue, my boss showed up with a bunch of coworkers from the marketing firm. They gave up their Saturday to help me strip white paint off Grandma's built-in bookshelves. Just thinking about it still makes my heart swell a little. In the middle of all this chaos, I got a text from my dad. He asked if he could come by alone. I didn't answer right away. I needed time to think, to make sure I was okay with seeing him. When I finally said yes, I made it clear. This visit had boundaries. It wasn't going to be a long heart-to-heart. I just wanted honesty. When he showed up, he looked different. Smaller somehow. Not physically, but emotionally. Like the strong, confident man I'd known all my life had vanished, replaced by someone weighed down by guilt and time. "I came to apologize," he said quietly as we sat on the porch, the same porch where Grandma used to teach me how to spot constellations in the summer sky. "There's no excuse for what I did," he added. And for the first time in a long while, I felt like maybe, just maybe, this was a beginning, not the end. "I betrayed you and I betrayed Mom." Those were his words. What followed wasn't easy to hear, but it needed to happen. He opened up about how Diane had slowly pulled him away from everyone who cared about him. Little by little, he stopped being part of our lives, and her approval became the only thing he chased. "Somewhere along the way I lost myself," he said. "I stopped being your dad. I became her puppet. And even though hearing that gave me some clarity, it didn't take away the pain. I appreciate your apology, I told him honestly. But trust doesn't come back overnight. I need space. He nodded. He didn't argue. For what it's worth, he added, Diane and I are separating. The court case opened my eyes, showed me who she really is and what I let myself become. As he walked away, I felt something I hadn't in a long time, hope. Not that everything would go back to the way it was, but maybe one day we could build something new. Different. Honest. In the months that followed, I poured myself into bringing life back to the house. Some parts were gone for good, but there were pieces I could save. Others I could reimagine in a way that still felt like Grandma. I found craftspeople who understood old houses. Searched for vintage details that matched the original look. Room by room, I started to breathe life back into this old Victorian. And along the way, the house gave me little surprises, like it was giving back. A hidden drawer in the dining room buffet, filled with Grandma's handwritten recipe cards. Initials carved into the attic beams by generations before us. A bundle of vintage photos we'd missed during the last renovation, tucked inside a wall. Each discovery felt like a whisper from her, a reminder of why this home meant so much. 6 months after moving back in, I hosted a get-together for everyone who stood by me through the chaos. The house wasn't completely finished, but its spirit was back. Lisa came, the one who gave me a safe place to land when I needed it most. She even brought her new boyfriend. Mrs. Benson arrived with her legendary apple pie. My co-workers, who'd only seen pictures of the damage, stood in awe at how far it had come. Looking around at this group, my chosen family, I felt something settle inside me. This whole painful journey taught me more than I ever expected. I learned how to stand up for myself. I learned how to see who's really in my corner. And I learned that even after the deepest kind of hurt, it's still possible to come home again. When you really love someone, you show up for them even when it's hard. My grandma Ella Laner trusted me with her home because she knew I'd protect it with everything I had, just like she would have done. After all the noise faded and everyone was gone, I sat alone in her garden, now brought back to life. The stars were out, and I could feel her with me more than ever before. I looked up and whispered, "We did it, Grandma. Your home is safe." This journey wasn't easy. It hurt, but I came out stronger. I learned how to set boundaries and hold on to what matters. It wasn't just about saving a house, it was about keeping a promise. About building new memories in a space that now holds both our stories. If you were in my shoes, what would you have done? Would you have fought for what was yours or walked away? I'd really love to hear your thoughts in the comments. And if you've been through something similar, especially if someone close let you down, please know that healing is possible, even when the future feels cloudy. If my story meant something to you, it would mean the world if you liked, subscribed, or shared it with someone who needs a little reminder. Standing up for yourself, even when it's hard, can lead to something beautiful. Thank you for being here. I'm so grateful to walk this journey with you. And I hope your home, wherever and whatever that looks like, is always full of real love and respect.